I'm a bad motherfucker.
Any close observer of the Aryan already knows that.
Now, do you have an explanation, a reasonable explanation, why there is this anti-war and this very negative remarks about this interview from a lot of your colleagues and a lot of politicians in the world?
One of the ways that I think I'm different is I don't like the internet, and I haven't seen any of the reaction, and I would imagine, you know, I'm not the most popular person among my colleagues in the United States. I wouldn't have dinner with them anyway, so it's no great loss. But, you know, I can't imagine what their motives would be. I didn't go to Russia, of course, to promote Vladimir Putin. And if that was my purpose, I'd say so, because I'm not embarrassed. I went because I felt that most Americans, in whose name all of this is being done, don't really know what's happening, and they know nothing about the guy they're supposedly at war with, unofficially. And I just felt that my job, if I have a job in this world, is to bring information to people so they can decide. And so I wanted to do the longest interview I could with Vladimir Putin that contained the most amount of Vladimir Putin talking, not me grandstanding about what a great person I am. When an American journalist interviews someone like Vladimir Putin, the whole point of the interview is to say, I'm a good person and you're not. And that interview was aimed at his colleagues in the newsrooms in the United States. I'm a good person. Why are you such a bad person? You're committing genocide. Okay. That's not fruitful, and that's certainly not my role. I care what God thinks of me, what my wife thinks of me, and what my 4 children think of me, and that's all I care about. So I don't need to prove that I'm a good person. I want to hear Vladimir Putin talk so people in my country can assess what's happening. That's it.
I'll use the devil's advocate.
Advocate away.
Yes. Okay, I'll tell you. You should challenge in the rules of an interview, and you're a master in your business. It's not for me to give you a lecture about that, but you should challenge some ideas. For instance, you didn't talk about freedom of speech in Russia. You did not talk about Navalny, about assassinations, about the restrictions on opposition in the coming elections.
I didn't talk about the things that every other American media outlet talks about.
Why? Yes, this
because
is my
those
question.
are covered, and because I have spent my life.
So that's the exact same, very similar parallel criticism that people give me. Hey, why don't you go after Trump more? Why don't you make fun of Trump more? Why don't you call him a Russian? Why don't you go? I'm here to debunk that shit. And that's all covered. If you need to get your 10 minutes of hate on Trump a day, that's covered. It's everywhere else. It's everywhere else. I'm an alternative news source. I give you the alternative view. I also criticize Donald Trump when it's relative, when it's relevant. I showed you how he turned around on ending the Ukraine war. We showed you that. I have another speech of his I'm going to pick apart when I come back from my tour this weekend, where he says he wants to put drug dealers in prison. And I'm thinking, like, you mean like Dr. Fauci? That's how you want to click. That's what you need to do. But anyway, so when it's relevant, of course we do. But he's making the same stupid criticisms of him. We get the same ones here. Hey, why don't you do what everyone else is doing? Why don't you talk about the same things everyone else is talking about? I had people who I debated over COVID on this show say to me, why don't you bring on more mainstream doctors to talk about COVID? Do you mean the stuff that they're getting every other network? They get that everywhere. We're here to be the antidote to that, you dummies. Hey, why don't you just let Anderson Cooper host your show, Jimmy, when you're out of town? Literally, I had a guy who I debated about COVID on this show say that to me off air. I think he said it on air. Why don't you have more mainstream doctors on your show? Mm-hmm. Hey, why don't you have more pro-war people on your show, Jimmy? Why don't you have more pro-lockdown, more pro-mandate? Why don't you have more liars on your show, Jimmy? As if the doctors I was bringing on weren't mainstream doctors. These are the leading doctors in their field. They just had a counter-narrative to the establishment, so they were immediately discredited and smeared as fringe, which they were not. The doctors I was bringing on owned 5 patents on vaccines. These were not fringe people. They just were telling you the truth about COVID. They wanted me to bring on more liars. That's a real thing that was said. I think it was said on camera. We should bring on more mainstream doctors on your show. So anyway, that's exactly the same kind of stupid criticisms he gets, and he just rebuffed it. You get that everywhere. That's not what I'm interested in.
Talking to people who run countries in various countries and have concluded the following, that every leader kills people, including my leader. Every leader kills people. Some kill more than others. Leadership requires killing people. Sorry. That's why I wouldn't want to be a leader. That press restriction is universal in the United States. I know because I've lived it. Ask my former, I've had a lot of jobs. And I've done this for 34 years and I know how it works. And,
so he's saying, hey, why don't you tell people that Putin's a killer? Why don't you tell people that Putin restricts his media? He just said, just like Donald Trump said, there's a lot of killers. America has a lot of killers. George Bush killed 1 million people in Iraq. Joe Biden is currently torturing Julian Assange. Edward Snowden is currently not allowed back in the country. They censored everybody on the internet during COVID. Everybody. And they're still doing it, by the way. If you think that's over, you're wrong. So, again, these people in America think censorship is something that happens in other countries. People in America think that terrorist states are other countries. America is the biggest terrorists in the world. They're the most murderous, the biggest terrorists, the most imperialistic. Nobody comes close to the United States.
There's more censorship in Russia than there is in the United States, but there's a great deal in the United States. And so, at a certain point, it's like people can decide whether they think, what countries they think are better, what systems they think are better. I just want to know what he thinks. That was the whole point.
Yes, I was very surprised about an inappropriate remark. I don't think it contains any of the what you can call jaunties or niceties from Mrs. Clinton when she mentioned a phrase about you. I don't want to repeat it.
Oh, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Don't worry.
Well, gentlemen, she called this gentleman, this honorable gentleman, that he is playing the role of a
traitor.
You see it?
I didn't see it.
You didn't.
She's a child. I don't listen to her.
No.
How's Libya doing?
No. Okay. She said.
So he's trying to make the point that Hillary Clinton called him. I'm pretty sure she called him a traitor, and he's saying, "I don't know what she called me."
The useful idiot.
Okay.
And if you see,
she called him a useful idiot. That's what she called him.
Interview that has nothing to do with this at all. He was trying to get a testimony about the world as Putin sees it. And this is exactly what we need to know, how this man thinks. Either you consider him an enemy, or you consider him a friend, or you consider him a dictator, but you should understand how the man thinks. Now,
you put it better than I could. You just described my motive right there.
Okay, sir.
Whether you think Putin is a dictator, whether you consider him an enemy, whether you consider him a friend, you need to hear how he thinks. And that's exactly what Tucker Carlson was trying. That's a real interview. And Tucker Carlson is making the point that most people, if they act that opportunity to interview him, which they don't ever take, and if they did, what they would do is they'd use it to show people what a good person that they are. And I'm going to call Putin names and say he's a bad person. And Tucker Carlson said, just like Trump said, a lot of killers. There's no bigger murderers and killers than the United States leaders. Okay.
Now, the question is, if this is that is that, as they say in the United States, and this is the power of media and the way the media is becoming very biased in a deep state like America, where are we going in the model of democracy in the world?
Media information in a free country is a counterbalance against entrenched power, not just government power, but the economic power, business. It was in my country, constitutionally, it is designed to serve as a counterbalance to that. So if sources of information, media outlets align with entrenched power, then you have a powerless population, and it's totalitarian. And that is very quickly the direction the United States is headed.
So the media is in bed with the government. The same people who own your congressmen and your senators and the president, they're owned. Those are the same people who own your media. So your media is entrenched with those same people, and now we are a powerless people. That's why we still don't have health care. That's why they still won't fix the homeless problem. That's why you still don't have free college. That's why you still don't have high-speed rail. That's why you still don't have nice things in America. That's why they're kicking community members out of their own community centers and filling it with migrants. Because you are powerless people. Because the media is aligned with the same billionaire criminals who own your government. And if you don't think your own government's owned, then you're a naive child.
And I do think that technology abets
Hey, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there for more AM Joy and the rest of MSNBC. And click on any of the videos right here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. And you can get more videos from MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit